Oh, well, we missed you.
That number.
I know, and our team was fully prepared for
Oh, that's different, okay,
the
so,
fathers.
Wow, what a killjoy, Richie.
this is, Senate Appropriations, and we're now taking up, so S 192. And, we've got Katie McGlynn here, to go through an amendment I asked her to prepare. And I know that this was a bill that was, sponsors, two members of this committee at least, Senator Lyons and Senator Sears. At the time, the original bill talked about a 9-bed wing at the, state psychiatric care hospital. Apparently, that plan had to be abandoned because of federal requirements. So when I was looking at the bill, my concern was we have no funding for the startup of another alternative in the capital bill or proposed. And so this came with the very clear statement that we were having a forensic facility to be authorized and operational beginning next fiscal year, July of 2025. And in light of where things have evolved, it seemed like that was not realistic. But on the other hand, there was a lot of policy work here that we wanted to move ahead. So what the amendment attempts to do, and I'll have Katie go through it, is to recognize that startup date was a little bit more fluid, and that also had an impact in terms of the compressed time frame for
Oh, we don't. Okay.
for rulemaking. So I'm gonna have Katie just run through this, and then
We don't have you.
We don't have the amendment.
I'm giving it to you.
Oh, okay. I would like it.
I'm glad you yelled at you.
I just haven't given it out yet. So what here?
You won't listen to
And so let me ask, is the pleasure of the committee to go through all the policy details of the forensic facility?
No,
No, okay. Or, if we could at least, recognize that this is something that we wanted to do. We talked about the need to do it, but, it seems like we hit a kind of a speed, a pothole maybe relative to the original plan.
So
So I'm gonna let,
is she gonna go through it from a very high level? I don't need to go through it in any detail, but. Or Senator Lyons, from a very high level.
well, what if, you wanna get into the policy then in terms of what?
No, I only from a very high level.
Okay, so the high level was the intent is to get a forensic facility established here in Vermont. The thought was that it was going to be much more easily accomplished by taking a 9-bed wing of the psychiatric hospital. CMS said that's not possible in single those populations. That meant that we were gonna have to find another site, and it was also gonna mean that it was gonna take more time because we weren't talking about designating space within an existing structure. So the bill, as it's come to us, has an intent that we're gonna have a facility operational July 1 of 2025. That just is not gonna happen in light of the funding. There's nothing proposed in the capital bill. So all this does is recognize the fact that 2025 is, in light of what we know now, is not realistic. And the only other change that was driven by that date was expedited rulemaking or to operationalize the policy that would govern admission to the facility and around the operation of the facility. That's how I understand it. Is that correct, Senator Lyons?
sounds good.
Okay, so what Katie's gonna run, no, I don't have any. No, not yet.
We will very
We will shortly, but not right this minute. Do you wanna wait?
I'll come back.
Okay. So, well, recognizing that chain of events, but a desire to let all of the policy work get preserved and move forward. We have an amendment that Kate can run through now that addresses those two pieces. One of which is recognizing the somewhat fluidity of when a facility could be operationalized, and the second was around the rulemaking. So I'll let you take it from there, Katie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Katie McDonough, up for Legislative Council. So I hear that there was an interest in understanding what was in the bill. I have a summary document. And that is on your webpage, so if you're interested, yes. If you're interested at some point in looking through that, that hopefully
Right here.
summarizes the 30-page underlying bill down to a few, I don't know, 6 or 7 pages, yeah. So still not short, but shorter. In terms of the amendment, let me pull that up, and I know you have it in paper in front of you. So there are 3 instances of amendment, and as you have heard, they all have to do specifically with the timing as to when a facility could be open and operational. The first instance of amendment amends the purpose and legislative intent section of the bill. That's the first section of the bill, and it removes a sentence in that section. The sentence that would be removed is, it is the intent of the General Assembly that an initial forensic facility be authorized and operational beginning July 1, 2025. To just be silent on that point in the effective, in the legislative intent section. The second instance of amendment has to do with the rulemaking section. Right now in section 13, there is language that directs that initial rules for the forensic facility be filed with the Secretary of State by a certain date. And that language with the date is being removed, so you would be silent on the date as to when the rules would first have to be filed with the Secretary of State. Yep, that is on page 29 of the underlying bill. So instead of starting a sentence with on or before August 1st, 2024, you would just be starting the sentence with the.
You already have the thought there.
Yeah, but you're striking the lowercase then, you're putting in capital.
Oh,
Yep. And then in the third instance of amendment, you're striking out the entire effective date section in the committee report and putting in a new effective date section. So in this new effective date section, the effective dates itself, the effective date section itself, the report that's being requested and the rulemaking section would all take effect on passage. And then all of the remaining sections that actually mechanize how somebody would could be placed in a forensic facility. That language would all be subject to a contingent effective date. So that effective date would be that all remaining sections shall take effect upon the delivery of the Commissioners of Mental Health and Dale a joint written confirmation to the Speaker of the House and the Pro Tem, which shall be posted on the General Assembly's website, that the forensic facility is operational due to proper siting, licensing, and funding. So when those pieces are in place and that has been certified by the 2 commissioners in writing to the Speaker and the Pro Tem, then those sections of the bill would take effect. And that's a model we've used a couple of other bills. The one that comes to mind is there was a lead poisoning prevention bill that depended on EPA approval a couple of years ago, and this was the language we followed.
Okay, so Senator Lyons, then Senator Booth, then Senator Zier.
So Katie, doing that, there are a number of sections in here where there's really work being done both by the judiciary and by AHS to adjudicate specific types of people who have committed crimes. And I'm wondering if by leaving the forensic facility out in the interim, does it obviate?
Impact on.
Yeah, well, so will it, so suppose someone commits a crime. If I could give an example here. Suppose someone commits a crime and meets one of the criteria, the mental health or intellectual disabilities. And it's clear that they should be both committed into the care of one of the 2, either DMH or Dale. And that they should be committed to a forensic facility. By not having this in here, will that not allow for a judge, Superior Court judge, to say, respond to Dale and say, yes, they should be committed. But B, that the individual should be placed in a forensic facility as soon as it's ready. And, you know, right in the interim, we're gonna put them in jail or wherever else.
By these sections not taking effect until the contingency has been met, you're maintaining the status quo. So right now, where there would be a commitment into the commissioner Dale or DMH, you would continue to have that commitment. But you wouldn't have any language about a forensic facility because one doesn't exist yet. So that
Right.
wouldn't be an option on the table for a judge to order somebody to a forensic facility.
Well, but there also isn't language in here about what the judiciary can do in the interim, like, so saying that this person is placed in a secure residential facility or in a residential home with 24/7 over, you know, caregivers. Wouldn't be able to say that in it until such date as the facility is in place. Then you'd have to go all the way back to the judiciary to make that determination.
I imagine the way that that would play out is that right now, the options that are currently on the table, like a secure residential recovery facility, would still be on the table. And we know that every year, if somebody is on an order of continued treatment in the DMH context or is receiving care in the Dale context, they get a judicial review every year. So once the forensic facility were to become an option, those statutes would take effect, and then a judge, when they're reviewing the case, would then have the option to move somebody to a forensic facility.
They'll still
If they
have to go
meet the
back to the
criteria.
courts to do that.
Well,
Wouldn't
those
be
are
automatic.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's my concern.
What we're trying to do is recognize the policies are all around having the facility in operation and the governing of admission, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, not disrupt that interim period, however long from now until when it gets brought online. Although I think the other body, there's a lot of debate around even the term forensics, so it's be interesting to see how that evolves. So I'm gonna go to Senator Ruth and then Senator Cedar. And with a big victory
You
on
guys have
that.
met, right?
It's a Vermont,
Virginia.
go cats on the back,
So,
clearly Vermont.
Pardon me.
thanks, Katie. So this is unusual for me in that I can't remember a bill where we were saying that essentially a commissioner or a secretary would decide whether to do it and when to do it. Because if I'm reading it right, there's nothing that compels the creation of this facility. It just says if they do it, then these policies would come into force.
But you've got, Act,
So that's my question.
Act and Resolve number 27.
That's my question. Is there something in there that, that compels the creation of the facility? And if there is, I'm wondering why this first version of this included language to do that for ordinances.
By kind of hitting pause on a lot of the sections that create a forensic facility, you only really have a purpose and legislative intent section at this point that's saying it's the purpose to move forward with a forensic facility. You do have
And
an,
that's from 2023 Acts and Resolves.
no, in this language, but you also have,
What specifically was in that?
let me pull that up and that also had a legislative intent section that had several studies that had a working group. But what was in the legislative intent section?
Because we're eliminating our intent. And yet it says it's the purpose to enable. But I don't see how we are enabling them. I don't see anything in the legislation that would remain that enables it. It just says if you do it. Is that? Well, let's do it.
You feel it needs to be the intent to.
Well, I mean, it's just.
We could say it's intent to bring it online as soon as possible.
Yeah,
I
mean,
You know,
that-
administratively or budgetarily feasible, I don't know.
Because if we're silent and we're just saying, let us know if and when you do this. Because there may be things in the rest of the bill that they don't like. And they can just not have those happen by not bringing the facility online.
So the language from last year that passed was, it is the intent of the General Assembly that an initial forensic facility be authorized and operational beginning July 1, 2024, in the 9-bed wing of the current Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital. This wing shall be relicensed as a therapeutic community residence and shall provide a safe environment for both clients and staff. Any commingling of staff between the psychiatric hospital wings and the forensic facility shall be consistent with the requirements of any applicable collective bargaining agreements.
So our intent there is already moved. And so we're striking out our intent here. I feel like we're moving away from saying that we need this to a position where we're
That
not
is,
even
yeah,
stating an intent.
and I'm open if there's a better way of expressing it. My concern was, in light of the fact that there's nothing in the capital bill and where we had to come back to sort of starting from scratch, once that 9-bed option.
Yeah.
Wasn't possible, was to be somewhat more realistic, but I don't wanna leave the door open.
Yeah.
In terms of whenever you get around to it,
Yeah,
so maybe there's a better way of expressing the desire, the intent is to have this facility, but in a way that, it,
Gives flexibility and
Yes.
longer time.
yeah, gives a realistic timeline. Maybe,
gone
should we set,
6 months.
well, why don't we go center Sears, maybe there's another way of
Yeah.
expressing this, not coming back with a, I hate to use the term plan, but, whatever, go ahead.
I don't want to lose this opportunity. First of all, this administration supports this effort. I don't know what future administration might want to. It's important to note that there's important victims issues that are being dealt with in this bill that have been 10 years, 20 years, 30 years coming. That the welfare committee did a wonderful job on following the Act 27 working. Additionally, I've been involved with a mother whose daughter had her throat slit in broad daylight in Bennington at 11 a.m. Near a bank parking lot. The guy who allegedly did it has been found incompetent. I'm not sure whether he's incompetent based on mental health or development of disability, and that's not
I
important.
think it's a DMH.
Whichever it is, he is in jail, leave right now. And the testimony from the Department of Corrections workers was compelling. That these are individuals that they're not equipped to deal with. And then you have additional testimony that these individuals end up staying in corrections on detention, basically, longer than any other group that's on detention, because there's no place to put them. And so we're using corrections inefficiently and inappropriately, in my view. And we're also have the challenge in the House really has been over whether or not developmentally, intellectually disabled should be included in the facility. That was something that was controversial in the Act 27 group that Senator Lyon has served on. And I forgot what the vote was of all the members of the committee, but it wasn't unanimous. So it'll continue to be a controversy in the House. But I think we have to find a way to make sure, either through legislative oversight or whatever it is, that they continue building the plan.
Well, so
And that's what so I agree with you that
We need
we need
articulate
something in there that articulates.
well, so here's my question. The amendment gets rid of that second sentence.
Mhm.
Why not just bump the date out 2 years, 2027 or 2028. It seems like then we retain everything. There's a clock running, there's the intent expressed, et cetera. Whereas if we get rid of the intent and the time frame, we have neither. So
Well, if we really are serious about it, then we ought to take the capital bill.
Yeah.
And actually say this is a priority. And that's my concern, is putting out something that there's nothing behind it at this point. So that's my concern, is if we want to move it out. Or we want to say, let's look at the capital bill. I don't know what it would cost. I have no idea to bring a facility, depending on what the options are. So yes, center line.
So I did have a very short hallway conversation with Jennifer Fitch about this, and I said, there's nothing in the capital bill and there's nothing in the budget, and yet this has been a priority for the administration and for many folks in the
So
legislature. Her comment back was, well, if you put a design and planning into the capital bill, we'll support it. So the governor hasn't done that, but that might keep it moving, and I don't know how we make that happen. The second piece is,
and how much did she give you a price tag? Oh,
but I have just one last comment. So if we move the July to 2026 and even if it said 2025, there's opportunity next year to come back and say, this doesn't have to happen right away. But realistically, it should happen,
well, then,
for all the reasons that Senator Sears.
and those are all powerful reasons, and we're all been frustrated on how long this has taken. And part of it is, if it's our intent, and this is a priority, then, how do we actually make that intent translate into some definitive action and some commitment of funding? Maybe I don't know what it would cost to do the necessary design and planning. Maybe we say that's a priority for the capital bill and look at some of the other stuff. I don't know if it's 2 million, and then say design and planning will begin in 25 with a anticipated opening date or whatever date we want to put in 26 or something. It just, my concern was putting something out there, knowing that there wasn't anything behind it, which I thought was kind of tokenism. When this is such an important need, and it's one we've talked about for, I don't know, decades. So that might be another way of expressing, get started and give the necessary advance money to get us to, the next phase or whatever. Senators,
Well, even if we had it, say it was here today, brand new, just built, how the heck would we have the personnel to run it? I mean, up on the hill, right now, we've got 8 or 9 patients. And I don't know how many people up there working to run the play. I mean, it's millions and millions of dollars to work with a very few people. And I mean, we have gained money to keep a lot of things open, and we want to go ahead and build some multi-million-dollar facility that takes very expensive employees to run and no money.
It's not like those people aren't somewhere.
they are
Well,
there.
Yeah,
They're all
and there's some,
correct.
some of, if they're sent into the.
If they're
sent into
248, they
community-
aren't in corrections, they can't go into jail.
No.
They're not competent.
People with intellectual disabilities should not be in jail.
But
And
they are.
they are, but if they are not, where are they? They're in secure residential, not a facility, but in a residential
With a
home
2-on-1.
with more than 2-on-1.
Some
For the people, we're
cases,
talking
yeah.
about 3 or 4-on-1, 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's expensive. Whatever we do, it's gonna be costly, and we're gonna need people.
But we've got costs right now, certainly because they're being placed, and frankly, our designated agencies are usually operating those, 2-on-1, 3-on-1.
Their testimony was also compelling in certain instances where they can't handle somebody.
And the way the physical design and homes is, but then you've got the, other, the least restrictive.
The least restrictive environment, so there will be one person, 2 people, 3, whatever.
So the question is, we've got Katie here. She drafted up this amendment to address what my concern was putting something out that I know is unrealistic. And there wasn't any money behind the intent, and if we wanted to, we can go back and maybe look at redirecting some of the money in the capital bill. The governor took 10%, 4% up to the maximum of general fund to put in his capital bill. And maybe we take a look at that and say,
This should be.
this should come ahead of that, if in fact we mean it. And so we need to have a estimate, I guess, from Jennifer Fitch in terms of what that first phase would require. And then we can put in, that would start and we would fund it. Which to me means we do mean it. And then what we think might be that out of date cassette, particularly for the facility to actually come online.
And that would allow us to get rid of that contingent effective date, which,
Yes.
we've been struggling in judiciary about raise the age with an administration that is clearly saying one thing but doing another in terms of preparing, not preparing to implement that.
Depending on whether they want it or not.
Right, and so I just think it's not really the right moment to be that.
I would say the administration wanted it because we heard very clearly that they wanted, what was the status, was the bill gonna come out?
Well, they
So
say
they
they
want
want, they say they want to raise the age too, but then they don't prepare for it. And I think similarly here, there's nothing in the capital bill, there's nothing in the budget. Which, how much do you want it if you're not willing to begin that planning process?
Well, I'm gonna suggest then we see if we can get a ballpark figure. I guess we will go to we will go and look at what's in that
You always
capital
put 2
bill.
million in and left the margins.
Well, I'd like to have something that, we can,
But you wouldn't put it in here, you put it in capital.
no, I might not.
Put it in. this-
I think I would reduce the amount that they have and put it in here.
Okay.
On the way down this very morning, there was on TV, we're gonna be getting a bill to fund school construction. Well, where's that money going?
It's only 6 billion. 6 billion.
Only
$6 billion?
Well, that's
Be-
the,
Oh,
that's the
I
new,
mean, we're gonna build this, we're gonna help build that, we're gonna do this, and where's the money? Show me the money.
options, Marlene's.
So why don't we get a better fix on, take a look at what's in the capital bill? Because I think that there were some things. I talked to Alice Evans and she was still under the impression that the 9-bed facility was gonna be at the psychiatric.
I was too.
We were over.
Much.
No.
I had heard that, and your antenna.
So you can understand why I was concerned about what we were putting out here.
Yes.
But if we really mean it, then you put your money where you're,
Well, Vince can write that.
oh, good, all right?
Yeah.
He's probably generating some of the clientele.
Yeah, well, he's got this.
He probably got some of the
Capital bill.
advanced.
left.
Oh,
$30.
so if we go to the capital bill and put the money, and we will somehow being redirected from the capital bill, so we know,
Yeah,
well,
all the general fund portion of the cap.
it's what, $10 million?
The biggest concern for me is that.
I think it's more like 10 million, it's general fund got moved over there.
Well,
That's part of the reason we're having so much trouble with our general fund, is because they've added a significant use,
With their.
to avoid bonding.
Within.
That's what it works out to. So they did it. So, thank you, Katie. We will, move this thing forward, but we'll do it in a way that makes it clear that, that
We expect it to happen.
that they'll be expected to happen. We're prepared to, put the money where our mouth is and obligate whatever we can get for a figure. And I don't know, can you call, would you follow up with, Commissioner Fitch and just see, based on her conversation with Senator Lyons, what would be a realistic figure?
Well,
You don't want to do whatever.
Planning for the sign.
We can hear back from you.
And this bill would have to get out by Friday, right?
Yeah,
Well, we've got time. Yeah. Today is only Tuesday. All right, so once we get a fix from that, and then, can you get me, and I may have it, what the administration's proposing for that $10 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought it was kind of frothy, to be honest. Frothy. Well, yes,
What is frothy and budgetary?
it's the big way.
Over from last
Yeah.
year.
Thank
More
you.
anticipated. It's like not subsidy. It's more here with the. So it's bad. More fraud and subsidy.
is that?
More fraud.
Oh, we're already
So now we are
paying back the bonds.
on 220. Or not 240, and 220. Is this the libraries?
Yes.
You look pained.
It looks like.
The library.
Mhm.
Okay.
So Tucker Anderson is here to sort of give us an overview of the bill. I didn't remember that it carried an appropriation when I looked at it. So, and I've also heard that it might have to go to judiciary. Is that
Well,
correct?
criminal threatening piece. I don't know if you've seen this.
Senator Campion never mentioned it.
It's,
Well, you don't mention
you know, the
it then.
list of places where if you threaten somebody,
Oh, yes,
Like hospitals.
actually Senator Hashim did.
it adds libraries, which is not a big addition.
So if you want to just run through this bill quickly, and then we'll see, the connection to the spending of the state.
Thought you meant firearms.
Were you taking some leave?
I was worried.
When it start?
In 2 days. So good afternoon, Tucker.
For
Anderson.
sure,
This
or
is-
is that just your estimated date?
It's for sure, locked in, ready to go. So tomorrow's my last day.
No way.
Yes, way, very exciting.
Very good.
You're
Because-
pleasant, you know.
How do you know, or is it a scheduled procedure?
It's a whole scheduled thing, yeah.
So sometimes you get surprised, you know.
Yeah, surprise would be lovely, it means I get to start leave a day.
I was
later.
surprised, but it wasn't even at the delivery.
Um,
I didn't get it.
So,
Oh, you're.
Oh, well. All right, thank
as a
you.
leading note on the bill, you are correct. There are no appropriations in the bill as it is recommended for amendment by Senate Education. And there's no money moving at all. In fact, I don't think that there will be any state or even local funds moving because of the bill and the way that it is structured. The quick run through.
What's there as introduced? That's what I said.
There was, as introduced, there were some.
Oh,
Or-
but if there
or
was,
libraries.
funding in the underlying bill, that's why we got it.
Okay,
Okay,
would you like to cover
no,
what's in it?
no, as long as there's nothing, we get it as long as the underlying bill carries an appropriation. So now you've answered the question why we got it.
Yes, and now I've learned something as well, like take with me in my future trips to the city.
Yes, because a lot of times people think if they strip out the appropriation, they can avoid us. The answer is no.
Right.
I don't know why people would want to avoid us. You
Yeah, it's so
know?
much fun.
Yeah,
I mean, lobby.
yeah. Okay, so we'll have you rip right through this, Tucker.
Sections 1 and 2 relate to selection and retention policies for public libraries. Essentially, material selection, reconsideration. It would require every public library to have one and would grant the Department of Libraries the authority to adopt model policies that could be used by your local libraries. Section 3 of the bill deals with the confidentiality of
So
library.
this would deal with attempts to restrict the books that you have or remove the books from
If there was
circulation.
if there's a community petition, for example, to remove a book from circulation, there would have to be a policy in
There
place.
wouldn't be
that's-
many books because so many of them have actually been banned in some form. Even Harry Potter. Oh, seriously, because of the, witchcraft and wizardry and stuff. I didn't know that until I was Professor McGonagall. Yeah, library.
Maybe you attended one of those
No, I didn't.
lieutenant governor's meetings.
No. All right, so now we know what the intent is.
Yes. Section 3 of the bill deals with confidentiality of library patron records. So for your information, your library records are confidential by law, and if they are revealed to any person, you have a right of action against a librarian. That is existing law, and that protection exists for anyone who is aged 16 years of age or older. Section 3 would lower that to 12. So any library patron 12 years of age or older would be entitled to confidentiality of their library patron records.
My goodness, those teenage boys could be taken.
I'm just wondering what the impetus was behind that.
This came from recommendations from the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont to equalize the ages across a couple different subjects, including healthcare, where there are healthcare decisions that can be made by 12-year-olds. So they squared this with that.
Oh, good.
Thinking of one of the.
This may not be such an easy bill to report.
Magic age.
All right, thank you, Tucker. You don't realize how many different diverse thoughts that you just triggered here, but, okay. We'll keep moving.
Section 4 is the section that you discussed earlier dealing with criminal threatening. This adds public library to one of the locations that's covered by the section in Title 13. And to illustrate the nuance of the change here, municipal buildings are already covered by this section. And the addition of public libraries as it's defined in Title 22 extends this to association libraries that are not owned by a municipality. So if you can, I don't know how many of you have association libraries in your towns that are community funded, but this would extend it to the Ivy Library in Middlebury.
Oh, the Dorothy Avenue Library. The Pope Memorial. Okay.
Sections 5 and 6 deal with governance statutes for both association and municipal libraries, and essentially cleans those statutes up to make sure that they reflect each other. So similar governance models, and ensures that the position of library director is overseen by the board of library trustees in both instances. So there was confusion with the use of terms in the past as to whether the select board was in charge of the library directors. Finally, section 7 adds some authority for the Department of Libraries to administer continuing education, to adopt model policies, a collection development policy, and finally, the discretionary authority to develop best practices and guidelines for public libraries.
Can I ask, was that? Are we at 7 yet, section 7?
Yes.
It says, shall provide a continuing education program for a certificate in public librarianship. I'm just wondering, how big a commitment is that? In other words, is it relatively easy for them to provide that, or is it from scratch they're gonna have to develop?
I'm glad you added that last clause to your question. So I was
Yeah.
gonna say there's two answers. I don't know whether it's easy to do, but they're already doing it.
Okay,
They've been doing it for quite some time. They already have a course of study for any library in the state to take. I think it's up to 120 of their credits. They have courses that are posted and available. They do regular.
oh, so it was permissive language, now it's just becoming a mandate.
Yes, and this was a request from the department to
Fair enough.
put in the section.
So, going down on that same page, number 10. One, the first 9 is may develop and adopt, and the second shall adopt a collection development policy reflecting diverse people in history, etc. Is that something new? Is that the state library that would be doing that work?
Yes,
Okay,
so the
The
state
state
library, yep,
and the state librarian says that's
yes,
Okay,
and
thanks.
this language reflects the same collection development policy language that the state curator has. With the addition of 2 new diverse classifications in a non-exhaustive list of religion and political beliefs.
so, there's not, we're not asking anything of the Department of Libraries that they didn't testify to your knowledge and support it.
The state librarian was in the committee.
And, this went to education as well,
Yes,
As well
because of school lot, no, well, I guess,
the education committees in both the House and Senate are the committees where all library bills go.
that's the reason they got it. Because it does talk about Vermont libraries, it doesn't reference all libraries in, public schools.
Correct. And currently in statute, there's sparse information about the school libraries. It's really focused on public libraries.
Thank you, I just want to be
if
clear.
you're a library in a public school, you don't meet the definition of a public.
We did, ask Senator Campion to come in. Did education take testimony on this then? This is, Their strike all bill.
And this is their strike all.
and he wants to come in,
But not today.
not today, so I'm going to, not take action to vote this. Well, he wants to testify, so.
He does want to testify. He texted me and switches. Also, he wants to testify,
So,
but he's not available.
so we're, as courtesy for his request, we're not gonna vote this out. All right, well, thank you, Tucker, and, we'll miss you.
Tucker, thank you for all your help.
You, if you have a problem adding libraries, then to provide staff.
I-
Okay, so would you like me to go off? Yes.
No.
I'm, well, actually, our next witness is here, so we can keep going. And when did you say Senator Campion will come in Thursday, was it?
I need to check back
Okay.
with them to see what.
Okay, so we'll just hold our vote. Thank you. But it does say you can't. Until they add it. Public library by extension. That's what this is right here. I believe that's what that's intended to do. It can't bring the one into one.
I think it's. Section, I think it's,
Hi, how are you?
Let's see.
Oh, well, maybe. Okay. Yeah. It's supposed to be.
I'll check with Brian.
I mean.
I'm supposed to remember the flight.
Yes. It's on the air, it's on the air. That's.
One.
And that asked. Say that they, she was chatting with you about. Okay, well, we're gonna move on to human rights, and we were behind, but now we're a little bit ahead, so. Great. Thank you for, coming in and coming in a little bit early, so. yeah, enjoy the sunlight during our community. So if you wanna, as you can see from the schedule on the board, we are taking up the budget with the Human Rights Commission, and I think, is this your first time, presenting the commission's budget? Yeah. Well, welcome and thank you, so.
Thank you.
Want to just put yourself on record, we will go through, the budget request, which is fairly straightforward, it's relative to some budgets, but, also, you're relatively new to the positions of the sense of how you see the commission going, what your challenges are, and, you know, anything that you would like to sort of take this opportunity to, get us some information. We're probably not gonna focus line by line on the budget, but I really wanna sort of get from your perspective, the work of the commission and what you see as successes and maybe your challenges and, anything else that you would like to, send our way. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Faith Hartman. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Executive Director and General Counsel at the Vermont Human Rights Commission. Thanks for having me today. I did only become Executive Director this year. So I'm kind of new at doing these appropriations testimonies, but I did already speak with the House. I just want to give you a little bit of a background on me. I did become Executive Director this July when Bora Yang left the position. And I've been serving as a staff attorney investigator for about 2 years before that time. So I have a lot of that hands-on experience about what our cases look like and what challenges we're currently facing. You know, I thought I would give you a little overview of our work in case you're not super familiar with what we do, and I'll try not to take too much time to do that, if that's all right, or do folks feel clear on what the Human Rights Commission is and what our role is?
I'll look to the committee. Obviously, we've been doing this budget for a long time, so I think we are familiar with the work of the commission.
Great.
One of your commission members, actually Senator Westman, recommended her highly, and she's now on your.
I listen to it all the time.
You listen to her singing my praises all the time.
She does say good things.
Well, what I want to share about our challenges is that we're in the 2 years that I've been there, there's been a high amount of staff turnover. And there was turnover that led to me being able to apply for the position. And that turnover is a reflection of a couple of things, especially the really hard work of investigating and responding to complaints of discrimination and the extremely high volume of our cases. The fact is that I look at things right now, I do not feel that with the 7 staff that we have, we're able to meet the needs of Vermonters who are seeking us to investigate complaints. We can barely respond to the phone calls and emails that we get, and we only have 1 person in the role of answering those calls and all the inquiries and processing initial reports in an intake setting into complaints. We have seen a real spike in cases in the past year, partially probably because the moratorium on evictions has been lifted, and that is resulting in more housing cases as people get desperate to maintain their housing and feel that their evictions may be related to a discrimination. But you know, in the past fiscal year, we saw our staff, our intake person called the executive staff assistant. We saw that position turnover, and you'll see a steep decline in the number of calls we were able to log for the year because there was basically a 2-month period where we did not log calls or complaints. We did not file any new complaints during that time period because when 1 person leaves this office, a lot of work has to stop happening. And it is, I'm very concerned about it. And just in this fiscal year, we've already received and initiated more complaints than we processed in the entire last year. And we've closed almost as many cases already, and we're only about 7 months into the year. So I'm very concerned for how we're going to continue our processes if we just level fund this office. There is new legislation coming through the House, H 725, that would create three new positions that would enable me to feel like it's okay to continue to accept new complaints. But right now, our staff are processing about 65 complaints. We have 3 investigators doing all of those cases. Last fiscal year, we saw that out of all the cases that we did complete an investigation, and the average case took 269 days to close. And that is just way too long oh, I'm sorry, I have that number wrong. Let me get that right in front of me. I think I mixed up my numbers. And it is on page 12 of this, 649 days. So that's over 2 years that people are waiting to either be vindicated that they did not discriminate against someone, or that complainants are waiting to get a determination that discrimination did occur. So I really want to be able to continue to take and process the cases that we have in a timely manner. With the current budget situation and our staffing levels, I really am perplexed about how to go about doing that. So that's my big picture of like challenges and where we're at right now. There is no shortage of complaints of discrimination. We've been engaged in 5 years of outreach and community work with a new position that was created, the Director of Education Policy and Outreach, Amanda Garza's position, which was created about 4 years ago, has just really, we're seeing it pay off, and that more and more people want to take advantage of our services. And at some point, I'm going to have to just stop taking cases. And when we have had vacancies in the staff attorney investigator positions, that's exactly what Warren had to do for periods of time, for months at a time, is to stop taking certain cases because we just didn't have the bandwidth to process them.
Senator Starr, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, all the phone calls you get from complaints, the ones that you've actually followed through on, how many of them were legitimate complaints and how many were not?
Yeah, well, we get a lot of calls from anybody who thinks anything that may have violated their human rights,
Well, I'm talking about renters and.
Yes. So last year we accepted 41 new complaints out of over 600 calls that we logged. This year we have a much higher number of calls received and a higher number of complaints that have come in this fiscal year. We're looking at over 65 cases that we've accepted so far this year, in this fiscal year.
And you're screening them based on.
Oh, yeah, very extensively. We're only taking cases if we think that somebody is
Very
stating
egregious or.
what we call a prima facie case of discrimination. So being able to plead the elements of proof for housing. Housing is about half of our cases. The other half of our cases are a combination of public accommodations discrimination and state employees claiming discrimination. Those are our
State employees.
Yes. So when private people who work for private employers complain of discrimination, they either go to the EEOC or the state civil rights unit of the Attorney General's office. But if they're bringing a complaint against the state can be represented by the Attorney General's office. So the statutes are written so that we process those complaints.
How many of those complaints would you?
I'm sorry,
How many of those complaints would you dispatch?
5 employment.
last year, yeah. I would say we have already that number right now today.
We actually did, legal aid, we gave them more money because they were saying they were getting a lot of tenant, and they were concerned about also the evictions that were coming up. And so can you explain, the working relationships, because some people might call or go both places. Do you have some protocol in terms of who does what? Obviously, legal aid is not gonna determine the discrimination necessarily, or would they refer something to you if they felt that that was present, with some like to come in for their legal help?
So we definitely are performing different functions.
Yeah,
We are a neutral investigative and enforcement agency.
but would they refer to you as?
Legal aid represents a lot of complainants that have cases with us.
Yeah.
Also, people call us all the time with things that aren't quite discrimination, they're problems, but they're not discrimination, and so we often are referring them to legal aid.
Okay.
Legal aid attorneys I know that represent folks in housing cases before us are way overloaded, and I'm really glad to hear that there's a little bit more funding coming to them because a single lawyer should not be handling 75 cases at a time. And we see those cases because they're so overloaded.
I was thinking that you might obviously have some cross business there.
Right, yes. And sometimes a legal aid chooses not to take a complainant to represent a complainant, but they still come to us and we will process their case. Sometimes after the case has gone to a determination, if we found reasonable grounds, then at that point, the legal aid may decide to take on representation of them, which they may not have earlier. Because we've done all the investigative work.
Other questions right now? We'll let you keep going.
Okay, well, that does mostly sum up kind of where things currently stand. Last year, I'm sure you recall creating a new position for our office, which was very badly needed, which was to enable us to handle our litigation in-house instead of contracting it out to outside firms to take on enforcement cases. That's already paying off. We've already been able to handle new cases and do enforcement actions that we may not have otherwise chosen to do. So we're really thrilled with that position being created, and we're utilizing that very, very effectively.
So, in terms of the workload and you're saying your staffing is just not commensurate with the demand. Did you make that request to the governor's office?
I did.
At the time?
I requested 2 new positions.
Yes.
And I requested salaries that would allow for benefits. As I see it, the salaries that are appropriated in the recommended budget are basically flat level from fiscal year 23 and not reflecting changes that have occurred since then, including like the across the board exempt employee increases. So most of our employees, all of our employees are exempt. Some of them are on a pay plan. Most of them are on the staff attorney pay plan.
They did, health insurance and retirement, but salaries and wages. Like, kind of down 15,000.
My guess is that reflects a difference in pay of my position from board's position, and when I backfilled the staff attorney position, I was at a staff attorney 4 rate, and I hired someone as staff attorney 2, save them money.
I'm sure that's what.
Yeah. Just so you know, the personal services line at the bottom of that column, the top part of that column, that reflects the 7th position. Which is not reflected in the salary and benefits. There's that it's the personal services line at the top. That reflects the new position, which is still on its own line item for reasons that I don't decide or fully understand. But yeah, 90% of our budget is salary and related benefits. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room for operating expenses, and we have had an increase in all of our operating expenses. One thing that was not reflected in prior budgets that's partially captured in the other line is a contract we entered into for a case management system. Instead of using SharePoint and Word documents, we are now using a very low cost, out of the box product called Legal Files to start to maintain better data about our cases and house all of our case management, all of our case files. We had a database and access before this. So we're really moving into the times, but it's only about, it was about $9,000 for the initial installation of that, which came out of this year's budget, this current year. And it's about $9,000 per year to keep that going. So it's a very affordable system that will enable us to do good, great data for future reporting years around, the types of cases we have and their outcomes and all that sorts of info. I'm really interested in collecting that data over time.
So all your positions are filled at this point.
All of our positions are filled, and I'm fairly confident that was not going to change this year. So I would not sure what to do with the $24,862 vacancy turnover savings that is in here. I don't know where that number comes from. And I do not believe that that reflects reality of what we're going to have to spend this year to maintain operation and staffing.
Probably just an estimate,
Yeah.
not historical, if somebody was the, before the end of this week.
Right, every
When
year.
you're such small staff,
Right.
1 out of 7 then would really jack it up in terms of the normal 3 to 5% vacancy.
We have not, even with all the turnover that we've experienced, there has not been a vacancy turnover savings in our budget year after year. There has been a larger increase than what we've received this year. And there has also been substantial carryover. Fiscal year 23 had like a $66,000 carryover. Fiscal year 24 had a $1,300 carryover. And I'm working within that very restricted budget this year. So I feel a little anxious about that vacancy turnover savings being in there, and I'm not clear on where that money is supposed to come from.
The,
Okay, it sounds like it might be, I don't know. The administration will have to, but what you're saying is you approach, that creates a lot of anxiety on your part because you don't anticipate that that's the savings that you're gonna be able to achieve.
Right, and if we do have a vacancy turnover, it will put some important piece of work in our office to a screeching halt for a period of time.
But that would happen anyway with such a small staff.
It would.
Recruit in mind.
It would. And I know there was this exercise of trying to create a 3% savings or a 3% increase and nothing more for this budget year. I know that what's in here is more than 3%, but it is still not, I don't feel enough to support our regular operations as they currently stand.
the question on page 13. It's salaries and wages, like 485,000, benefits, 260. So that means your benefits are worth over 50% of what they're actually getting paid.
Benefits are very expensive, health insurance and retirement and all the other associated costs.
And those, do you negotiate them or does somebody
It's
else?
part of the state benefit package. We have no say over what those benefits are. Now, some employees may come in and not need health insurance, and that's gonna result in a much lower cost for that employee's benefits than someone who has a family and, 5 people coming onto the health insurance, but the health insurance is a portion of those benefits, because there's a lot of other built-in benefits that we cannot negotiate.
Normally, it's about 35%, so
35, this is over 50.
I know.
Wow.
Um,
You'd think there would be a cap on
no,
fringes.
No, isn't it more a question of where the salary is, right?
Right, we do have a lot of high paid employees because we have 5 attorneys on staff.
Yeah, so that makes us worse, not better.
yeah, your fringe would be lower.
The more
Because obviously your healthcare costs are more expensive, percentage wise. If someone is earning 40,000, then somebody's earning 120, right? So, that does seem a little high, but, I think that is all,
But it's not.
but I think that is all generated by, Vantage. So this is not anything that the commission came up with. This is how that costs got a portion. So,
it's a $1 million deal and it started out. I mean, most of us are sitting in here, a very small budget and
I
well,
think it's still a very small budget myself.
Started out with Margaret and Cynthia's kitchen.
yeah. That's very true. That's really the history of the commission, isn't it? Other questions that we have. I mean, obviously the roll-up is the standard, generated budget sheet that goes with personnel that's generated, by the agency of administration. I guess that would be finance and management, does that? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know, perhaps somebody can explain why that seems to be, do you have an explanation for why that seems to be such a big percentage
I don't know.
relative to the salaries and wages?
Senator Joe, I'm from finance and management.
You are,
Just a question for benefits relative to salaries.
yeah,
Um,
you might want to put yourself on record, please.
sure, this is Will Anderson from DFM. My understanding, would be that this is because, HRC employees have tended to accept, benefit packages that could representing like the maximum, what they would be able to, which results in a proportion, along with it being a small department that looks relatively higher, compared to other departments. It's not anything, more out of the ordinary than that.
Well, sometimes you have people that don't take the health insurance coverage because they're covered by spouse or they're not getting
I can't,
family.
I can't imagine that happening with anybody that comes to work for the state, because from what I've seen, who could offer any more than what we offer in fringe benefits? I mean, we're heavy on fringes and maybe light on the pay, but, so I would think
Well,
most,
don't forget the other thing, if you're part of the retirement system, I don't know if you are, but obviously, the amount of payment to the retirement system also is driven by salary. So, there are variables there that could make a difference when you've got just 7 people and they're at the level of professional,
And I think,
compensation relative to other departments. It could be everything from, the person who's at the lowest classification up through.
and I think what he just said is everybody took healthcare and everybody took, their retirement. And you got no, and I would disagree with Senator Starr in that, most people that I know that are teachers, their family members are in the teacher's plan.
what are you disagreeing about?
You said that everybody would take the state benefit package in the healthcare. And I think, a lot of people that, have teachers in the family, that's one of the reasons people teach.
Oh, to
Yeah.
take the health.
Healthcare. But this is something that you don't negotiate, you take it, and, whether someone enrolls and participates in the state plan is up to that employee, and you just, have to accommodate the cost.
Right, I have no say in what that dollar amount is, but I will say that our salaries are not particularly high or competitive for the level of work that our staff are doing. And that the benefits are a really important way to try to retain highly qualified staff who would otherwise be getting paid a lot more money in a different job and not be subjected to the amount of trauma and stress that processing discrimination complaints entails.
Other comments or whatever, I imagine if we looked at this roll up for a number of departments, on small ones, we'd see the same percentage. All right, I think Senator Sears, you're gonna be looking at a variety of things related to legal actions. Maybe we could
Well,
add that.
meeting with, judiciary is gonna be meeting with Bob Paolini, this group. There's people seeking legal help seem to have a problem nationwide and in the state to getting that help. And I think part of it is who you go to. And so, of course, Bob Paolini wants 500,000.
I know, and the courts want 6 million,
And of course,
and the state's attorneys want 2 something.
well, they need.
Oh, indeed.
that area.
The Madville area would like the comparable
They
amount.
need.
I'm just saying, it seems to me that we're having a lot of discussion around the whole issue of investigation, legal action, et cetera.
We're-
That needs to, we just need to have that little.
We need to better understand or help people better understand where they go to get legal help.
And
Yeah, I will say our office feels like a place that people go trying to find out what legal help is available to them. We refer people every day to the Vermont Bar
Yeah.
Legal Law Referral Program, to Vermont Legal Aid, all these entities, Disability Rights Vermont, these entities that are already so overloaded. And people who do have complaints with us are constantly trying to find other legal information from us and get legal advice from us, even though we don't represent them and we
Yeah.
cannot provide that information. And it is a real stressor for all staff members who interact with the parties in our case.
My only point is we're kind of looking at all these requests that relate, to, legal action or investigation. And so I think you said you made the request, it is reflected in the governor's. I don't know what we can do, but I'm just saying, we just need to make sure that your request is on that list.
Yeah, I just-
Great. And one of the important functions that we do help parties with is that they are in a legal dispute. And a big part of our role is to do conciliation. We are a really important go-between for people who otherwise are not represented, can't get to the bottom of the issue and resolve their complaint. And we do resolve a lot of complaints each month, and we see that that means that they end. They don't go into the court system and get filed in court because we've been able to help them in an informal way. Settle their case.
Diversion.
Yeah, it's a little form of diversion. It's a really important part of our job too, when people don't have attorneys that they need, figure out how to work it out, and we can be a very helpful, we sign them up for mediation, or our investigators are actually doing a lot of conciliation, as do I.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, if you, I don't know if you included this here, your position, exactly what you would be. Not that we can necessarily say that it can be done, but could you, if it's not in this package,
Isn't that the difference between,
no, I want to know what you would want for positions. You said
Oh.
two.
I have
Yeah.
3 positions that are being proposed in each 725.
But you said you have asked for 2.
I asked the administration for 2
And
in
could
this
you
budget
tell us,
process.
and could you just tell us, don't need to do it right now, but were they attorneys? Were they?
One is another staff attorney investigator that would make us have it 4 total to enable us to process our cases faster. And the other one I asked the administration for is an intake specialist, which would be another full-time person to answer the calls, respond to complaints, and help cases get initiated faster, provide a little bit of backup for this one position that's a revolving door of someone leaving kind of every 3 years because it's such a high burnout job.
Okay.
Yeah, and the total for H 725 is a
What is H7?
$350,000.
It's a House bill, but the House is building a budget within the revenues available. And I will tell you that they are not going to be able to
absolutely.
fund
Everything.
everything,
Right.
much less anything, to be honest. So that's why I'm just saying, what was your request? And I'll make a note of it, and we will add this to sort of that growing list of where people feel resources are not adequate to meet the demands.
I can provide you with the written testimony I provided for the House General that first took up that bill that describes the positions and lists out the dollar amounts for each, if that would be helpful to you.
If you would, just send it to me and I'll, thank you.
Can I ask you a quick
Oh,
question?
yes, sir.
So the intake person, would that individual be able to sort of triage what goes forward and then what is not a worthy case?
Yes, we have someone who does that work now.
Okay.
And they also do all of the administrative service for the agency, meetings, scheduling, budget, invoices, all that stuff as well. So it's a really high demand position. We're about 3 to 4 weeks out right now on responding to emails and phone calls. And that's just
Oh, I know
the
what
demand
that's
of the
like.
job. Yeah, right. And that staff person now feels like if they take a day off, they pay the price for it. They cannot take a week off. You know, it's a really, really high stress position, and I'm afraid about additional turnover if we don't do something to support that.
So Senator Westman and then.
I just in pecking order. You got vacancy savings of 24,000 in 7 positions and nobody leaving. If you go. So
Right,
that's your number one concern. Your position, 7 positions you've got are level funded.
And, they would have gotten the normal increase for state employees.
they got the increases, but that has come out of the budget and I'm not aware of there being new pay act money coming in.
So, what you were funded is level funded for one for the next.
Flatlining.
Flat line, so
Exactly.
you got, so they get the increase, but it's not in your budget.
Right, which I think is why we had a $1,300 carryover last year.
Right. So it's vacancy savings, then you have no increase in the budget in the dollars for your people, but they got the increases in, and then you had a request for you.
Well, I think, right, so we'll have to just go back and look. I would think the first item would be to get what seemed to be a plug reduction bill. And then, but that's necessary to pay and meet the cost of your current operation. And then the other would be, 2 positions. And then I don't know, it's just really hard to interpret, what, and maybe we need to be clear. If what I understand is there is no money in this budget to give your staff an annual salary increase.
Correct.
And is that correct, finance and management?
That's correct.
All right,
And I did request that.
well, I could understand why.
Yeah,
Since
I really want to retain my staff that are working really hard and doing an amazing job.
Because normally, we've extended the negotiated salary increases.
Exempt employees are in kind of a no man's
I
land on that.
I'm sure that,
You have some classified or all?
No classified, one who's on a classified pay plan though, so she does get the step increases.
all right. It might be better if you could just tailor what you sent to the House and just confirm the vacancy savings doesn't seem realistic. And then, no salary increases have been provided. You've been flatlined, just like, mental health, just like all the community-based organizations, our healthcare delivery, et cetera.
It's not only your.
So you've got a lot of company here.
Yeah.
Just- I just want you to.
Right.
you-
No, I
You're not
appreciate that.
discriminated against, it's related to, being flatlined, it's not a great place to be. And so, if you could just give us, and then what those 2 positions would be and the estimated, salary and benefits that would go with it, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I'll get that to you as soon as I can.
yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've got a few days, so don't think it has to be done within 24 hours.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thinking that's discriminatory, maybe we should let the people.
Well, except there seems to be a lot. of people on that.
You're not there.
I don't think they discriminate, it's that they kind of did is because.
So committee, we have finished our testimony for today and I'm going to